Hello and good evening, everybody. It's John with WoW Support. We're back, and we've got a fantastic podcast tonight. We've got one member missing from our standard crew, but we still got the core here. So we've got me, we've got Jackson,
Hey, everybody.
and we've got our flight engineer, Artie, as always.
Good evening.
So yeah, we've got fantastic conversations coming up. We've got a couple subjects. Let me look at my list here. We've got Google was just found to be a monopoly or act like a monopolist. It's a little distinction there from a legal side, but end result's kind of the same. We've also got actually Black Hat is happening right now. So if you're out at Black Hat, turn off this podcast and go join one of the parties. It's a lot of fun out there. Tune back in later. And while you're at it, engage with this in whatever platform you're watching, and so you can watch us later when you get back from the party. Jackson, what else we got?
Yeah, bouncing off of that Google topic, we've got, I'd like to talk a little bit about Google's crawl bot. Or I don't know if that's exactly the right way to say it, but how web crawling works, along with maybe we'll dip into a little bit of browser security with that.
That's a short subject. We can cover that in about 5 minutes, right?
Right. No, that's about, I can sum it up in one sentence, and I'm sure you'll know exactly how Robots.txt works and all of browser security.
Nice. That'll be exciting. Artie, do you have anything for us? You want to steer us in any direction?
Well, there are a few news things I was looking at today, but I really don't have anything off the top of my head. There was the 0.0.0.0 day that was discovered. Basically, a flaw in browsers that would allow somebody to access your machine by using commands sent to 0.0.0.0.
That sounds exciting.
Thank the people at Black
And that kind of reminds me, back when they were handing out IP addresses, do you know how that all worked, Jackson? Just to segue for a second.
Back in the day, how IP addresses worked?
Yeah, so you would request from central authority. Different authorities have different levels of control. But I'm going to say it wrong. Is it Aaron that hands out the IPs, or was it ICANN?
I don't know.
I should look that up before I start talking into a segue. So when they divvied up the internet, when they divvied up IP addresses, they decided that they were going to flop a whole bunch into space that you just can't use. Then they also locked down 127 dot whatever. So there's 16 million IPs that we can't use on the internet. Well, if anybody's been paying attention to that, we're almost out of IP addresses. So that's exciting.
If we didn't already run out.
Oh, we ran out, and then they found more, and then we ran out again.
Oh, yeah. Are we out of IPv6?
Not even close.
Okay,
So I'm like 32,000 IPs per square meter of land.
That's what I was thinking.
I was looking into that earlier, and they said, one researcher said there are more IPs available in that than there are atoms on the surface of the Earth.
No way.
I don't know about that. That's a big number.
It is a big number.
Now I got to do the math. Thanks for the homework assignment. Put a note down. Let's give me a pop quiz next week. But
no, I mean
yeah. So there was a company that they realized that one of the Class A, the 5 dot network, was not used, wasn't assigned, wasn't handed out. So they just kind of cyber squatted on it. They started using it, and they published their addresses out as 5 dot network. And at one point, years later, they realized the internet authorities realized they never handed this out to them. So they had to grandfather them in.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting if you look at the history of the internet. and we'll probably end up talking about this as we get into browser security because it does have something to do with it. Like the internet was never designed to be this secure, robust system, right? It was pretty much we develop it as we go. It was initially started just to be, a way for professors or researchers to share their research with other universities. That is how the internet started, and so they created IP addresses, and like you said, we've run out, and so I mean we've just been building on top of maybe what's a broken system. I don't know if we'll ever break it to the point where we have to completely redo it, but especially, I mean, when you look at uh HTML, right? I mean, that was never designed to be secure. It was just here's my web page. Anybody can have it. And so, yeah, it's interesting when we get
I want
into
text
that.
on the left of the screen. I want text on the right side of the screen. And there's sometimes I want the text in the middle too.
And if you want to make tables, you've got to learn.
Tables are fun. I like making tables in HTML. I might be alone in that, but
Oh, tables are fun.
it's an exciting time. We're looking at the genesis of the internet, how it grew up. But Jackson, you're absolutely right. Security was not in the forefront of everybody's mind when they put it together. Anybody can spoof anything at any time. And okay, great. So we've had to come up with securities. We've had to come up with traceabilities. We had to come up with rules and regulations on how to,
encryption.
yeah. I mean, if you're just sharing research papers, who cares if a copy gets leaked out to somewhere else? Well, that's good, but bank accounts? Who cares if those bank accounts get leaked out somewhere?
As long as it's not mine, I'm fine.
Oh, yeah, I love the argument on encryption. If you don't have anything to hide, what are you trying to encrypt? And I love the reply to that. If just because I don't have anything to hide doesn't mean I want to share it with people.
For some reason, I see Lenny sitting in the house. Please don't tell people how I live.
I miss the golden years of sitting in after school watching The Simpsons.
So, going back a little bit, you say that you don't think that the number is that big, but I will recite it for you. 340 undecillion, 282 decillion, 366 nonillion, 920 octillion, 938 septillion, 463 sextillion, 463 quintillion, 374 quadrillion, 607 trillion, 431 billion, 768 million, 211,456 addresses.
So is that a prime number?
No, it's even.
Oh my goodness. That's actually crazy.
but-
I didn't realize it was that many.
Yeah, that's a bigger number than I thought. I know it's 2 to the 128th, but wow. Could have been solved if we just had 5 octets instead of 4 in the IP address. 5 sets of numbers instead of 4. That would have pushed this back to the Linux doomsday. The Linux this time got a countdown. It's 2038.
Really?
It started counting time in a 32-bit number, and at some point it's going to run out. We know exactly when it is, and all the Linux machines that aren't patched will just come to a stop.
That's so funny. I didn't know about that. I mean, have they fixed already, or are they just planning to patch it eventually?
Linux is so ubiquitous, and since we're 12 years away from it, or more, 12, is my math right? Anyway,
14.
14. My math is not right. It's late on a Thursday. There's so many embedded devices. I don't think we're going to catch up to it. I think we're going to have a problem. It's going to be Y2K, but for real.
We're gonna have to it'll be like the New Year's countdown. That'll be probably the nerdiest thing I ever take part of is like the Linux death countdown.
We still
I'll
have
probably just be
time,
like
and I would like to point out that the Linux users tend to be a lot more on the ball when it comes to fixing those types of problems. Just
right.
because a lot of Linux, a lot of it, it is open source still. There are a few that have gone closed source, one of them recently.
Which one was it?
Red
Was it
Hat.
Fedora? Red Hat?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
To
Yeah,
the
you
to
don't.
the chagrin of everybody in the company with stock, and to the woe and dismay of everybody else.
Yeah. I was gonna say. Oh, just slipped my mind completely. Oh, I was gonna say, yeah, you don't accidentally end up with Linux on your system. So to Archie's point, usually the people who have Linux, they're a little bit more mindful of these things and are aware of them.
Yeah, and it's not the everyday user that's going to get stuck with this. It's going to be those, the routers on the wall, the access points in the ceiling, the
Yeah.
all those little things that you carry with you. Not the Apple Watch, but the cheap knockoff watches. All of those are going to be embedded. I mean, we got a nightmare of time getting firmware up to date on some of our systems. Doing a full kernel upgrade or whatever it takes to get that out of your embedded device, not going to happen. There's going to be a lot of e-waste coming up.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. You're totally right about that.
So
I worked with a 3D printer, not a 3D printer, a laser engraver
Uh-huh.
that ended up with Linux on the inside of it. Found this out because the touchscreen on the device was broken, and so we pulled out a keyboard and mouse and started working around on the display that you weren't supposed to do. It was a hidden feature. But we're falling down into some chit chat. I love this, but we're falling off our agenda here, guys. So let's go with the top one. Google was found to be a monopoly.
yes,
Ooh.
let me read a little bit about that from Washington Post. So it was an antitrust case brought against them by the FTC, and they were found to have been in violation of antitrust laws when it came to the way that they approached the search engine business and the way that they've approached their advertising business. So they have been found being anti-competitive in those fields.
I can't argue with that. I mean, if you
Who'd have
look at the
thought?
way they if you look at the way Google has positioned themselves, it's kind of brilliant. When I was back in high school, we made a joke about downloading a copy of the internet. It turns out Google actually did it. Not only was it just a fun, cool project, but they ran a search against that downloaded copy, advanced that algorithm, and made it into a useful, very powerful tool, and figured out how to make money off of it.
And then turned it into whatever it is now.
Well, and if you were at the head of that company and figured out, hey, I can make an IPv6 numbers worth of cash off of just selling ads to people who want to make sure that the ads get to the people they need to go to. Yeah, you would find ways of pushing your product into other places. You would sell your search to the phones. You put it in everybody's browser. You would pay companies to have it as their default. Because why not?
So
You've got money to burn.
another topic that I looked into with regards to this, and it's sort of an offshoot from this. Their advertising isn't foolproof because there have been people who have been able to spoof Google in Google Ads and place their ad in there claiming to be Google, but if you go through and check like all the verification, it's some random guy, or rather some random guy's name that is the registrant and not Google itself. So um, they do have some bugs in their system, and they need to. They are working on ironing it out, but I think that having one universal source for all the advertising is not necessarily a good thing, especially in a world of advertising when you're trying to compete with others.
Well, and
And I'm not
that's
sure.
go ahead.
I'm not sure if I would call it bugs, if not more of oversight. Because Google is so massive. I mean, just think about it. Imagine Google goes down for one day. I mean, with the recent CrowdStrike thing, we saw what happens if you have a Microsoft system or Microsoft-based system go down. I mean, you stop a lot of things. If you stop Google, uh, that's a massive shutdown, uh, worldwide of, impact. And so because they are so massive, there's a lot of things that go into oversight. And um, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but having, run ads before and gone through that verification process, most of it is untouched by a human, right? So if you figure out how to trick the bot, then I mean you get around a lot of things. And and you can't necessarily blame them because I mean you can't hire the manpower to be able to handle, a human eye on everything that's going on. Um, Surely there's got to be a better solution for the verification. Maybe that is something that a human eye should be looked on because it's not everybody who's trying to advertise on Google. That number is still massive. I mean, that is the number one revenue making thing on the planet is Google Ads. But um, I feel like there should be maybe a larger emphasis on that verification process. Because, like you said, someone advertised as Google, spoofed Google on their own platform, and used it to distribute malware. I mean, that's
Yep.
that's embarrassing.
And I guess the question is, what is the responsibility of Google to make sure that malware doesn't get distributed in their stead? Do they have legal obligation? Do they have legal liability?
True.
Um,
Because they don't advertise themselves as well. In fact, that might get into something a little bit more complicated than just a search engine. But if they're the ones filtering, they do lots of filtering, right? Because um, they're trying to get you most relevant results, and they don't they steer you away from things like the dark web, right? Um, but essentially, Google is just they are just a means of search. I mean, I don't know if there's a better way to put it, but I mean, they're not necessarily supposed to be a filter. So you bring up a good point. What's their responsibility? I don't know.
I think their
well, and that's
responsibility is going to be found in future legal proceedings like this.
well, and that's where I was saying last time is we don't know what the niche that these companies sit in is. They're not just an ISP. They're not just a data provider. They actually mix and manipulate that data and curate it for you for an experience. There's something there that we just haven't figured out what it is. And our legislators, I should say that plural, all of them, um, they don't understand it. And the tech industry themselves, they don't understand it. So who's going to regulate that, right? It's going to be an interesting time to figure that out. But back to one of your points, Jackson, Google has gone out. Like I'm on Wikipedia right now, and they've got a number of dates. So October 2018, August 2020, November 2020, December 2020. I mean, they've had global outages lasting for hours, where nobody can get into their Gmail or nobody can do a search. Can you imagine running in school? Everybody's using Google, save their files, just run their classroom, and all of a sudden, hey, guess what? Put the computers down. We get to go do something else for today.
Right. Yeah, it's a massive impact.
It's a disruption and a half. So I guess that really goes back to my key point. I'm going to stop staring at my screen over here. It's not if, it's when it goes down.
Yeah.
If you take Google's outage here and add up all that time, I'll bet you it's more person hours than CrowdStrike.
Definitely.
So I don't know. It's an interesting world we live in when we're aggregating all of these together. You run the risk of having antitrust and anti-monopoly kind of rulings and decisions, because if somebody has the very best product in the world, of course everybody's going to use it. And the question is, if you've got the best product in the world and you position yourself in the best places, it'd be like going to Disneyland with a fast pass, but you somehow got it to the point where you get first priority access to every ride. Would you turn it down if you had that kind of power?
Not a chance. I'm not waiting in line. I didn't go to Disney World to wait in line for 4 hours to ride the Dumbo ride. Are you kidding me? No way.
Back when Frozen was first out there, the wait lines to meet the Princess Elsa was literally 4 hours.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Yeah, not doing that.
I'd pay like a cousin of mine. Here, come dress up as Elsa and I'll bring my kids to you. That's way worth it to me than go to Disney World, wait in line for 4 hours. Oh
One of
man.
my friends at school, her job was basically dress up as different Disney princesses for parties, and it was something like $100 an hour to hire somebody to come and be at your kid's party dressed as a princess. And I know there are like dozens of those types of things out there, so it's doable.
Well, speaking of antitrust, don't get caught by Disney doing that.
Oh.
I believe she was with a licensed entity.
Well, that's good, because I would hate for somebody to get caught and sued by Disney Incorporated.
What'd you get arrested for?
I dressed up as a mouse.
Oh man. Speaking of monopolies, right? Disney. Well, I don't. So I guess I actually had a question. I'm going to ask that. And I don't know if you know the answer to this. Is Google shaking in their boots per se at all? Are they
Probably
afraid
not.
of this, or are they're just like, oh, whatever, we're getting sued again?
Google is
Like-
facing lawsuits from most governments right now, and
Right.
they don't seem very concerned about it. They've
That
already
was
they're-
my.
They're concerned. They're not scared.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those things in a business sense. Everything that's thrown at you is a challenge or an opportunity, right? So when you're sued by the government, first off, that's not a good day. I was reading Bill Gates's biography a while back, and he was talking about the day the Justice Department filed antitrust against Microsoft, and he said, "This was the worst day of my life." And I believe that, because here it is. You're providing a fantastic product, or what you think is a fantastic product, and the government comes along and says, "You're doing it wrong, and we're going to make you stop." Like, it's an attitude adjustment and a half in the form of, we're going to make you no longer a business.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well, I want to know
So-
if you think that this will actually bring an outcome of any sort. Like, do you think something will change?
yes. Yeah, they will have to change and adapt to whatever decision. They'll make some accommodation that makes sense for the government, so that you pass regulatory agency, whatever check and balance they put in place, they have to change. Government's not going to change their position. They've decided that you're a monopoly. They're going to make it stop being a monopoly. Now it's whether you radically change or minimally change. I'll bet you Google does minimal changes and life goes on. But they're going to have a whole team of lawyers and a whole team of executives figuring that out.
And
Yeah, and
we
we'll probably
have
be back
been-
in the same spot here in like 5 years.
Yep.
I'd just like to point out that we have been, focusing on Google, but that's because this ruling specifically was Google, and there are still pending cases against other large corporations like Amazon and Meta and Apple that are still pending in the same.
Yeah, those are little companies. Nobody knows what those companies do.
Yeah, Apple just grows trees, right?
Huh.
If I had a time machine, the one place I would go would be Steve Jobs' house when he was asking for people to invest, and the guy said, I'm not going to spend $400 on this. I got a stereo that I'm interested in. I would go be in that driveway with $400.
Yep. Well, speaking of Apple, and changes, actually, that was a pretty monumental change when they ended up allowing third-party app stores. Because that was always a huge thing since the beginning of Apple and Apple's mobile devices, I should say, is you were locked into the Apple App Store. And so them allowing, and this came as a result of the UK ruling, right? Of
EU.
having to, EU, that they had to allow third-party app stores, and so by default, the rest of the world kind of got it too. And I saw that, and that was kind of an interesting thing because I feel like it's been a long time since I've seen Apple have to budge on something, right? And maybe you can point something else out to me, but I feel like it's been a long time since they've had to compromise on something.
No, they have lots of compromises they have to do constantly. They have a whole team. All these companies have teams and teams of lawyers, and they're always busy doing something. And it's not always attacking other people. Half the time they're defending themselves.
Yeah.
Well, and it's an interesting position. So let's take the iPhone and the side loading apps. If we developed an iPhone equivalent, we would want to control that environment so that we could sell that environment to customers and say, hey, develop your app. Here's the rules of engagement. This is going to be safe for you to cultivate. And here's the rules for you to create. You can't do harmful content. You can't do, whatever it is. We would set that ground rule, and you can't break the rules or we'll kick you out of our playground.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the EU said your playground's too big. You have to let others come play. So is this a win for society? Is this a lose for Apple?
There are many
I don't know.
facets there. One of the drawbacks to having the access to these third-party stores is that you aren't able to verify if um, the program that you're installing is the official program or somebody's clone of said program. And on the other side of that coin, there are people that have spoofed programs on the Apple iStore and on all of the phone stores that are out there. They get through the automated systems that are designed to prevent that kind of stuff to get through. So, every week I'm reading a new article that's talking about this app was it downloaded and installed like 30,000 times from, the Android store, the Apple store, whatever. And it is a malicious thing that's like stealing all your banking data or something like that. So it's making it a little bit easier for developers to create something for the iPhone, but it also makes it easier for people that are making malicious programs to get those onto the iPhone.
And that's where I see Apple's defense on that, saying you're destroying our ecosystem. We've got a perfectly cultivated rainforest here. Don't let the loggers come in. Don't let these farmers come in. Don't let, let's keep this the way it is. for better or worse, that ecosystem existed and was pretty good. Now they have to contend with, garbage trucks. They got to contend with, anybody that's going to go mess up their perfectly set up garden.
That's a good point you make there, because they have a very good ecosystem, between all of their devices, not just one singular one. I was even having this discussion with some friends of mine. I was talking to somebody, he goes, I prefer, an Android phone. But he's like, I use Apple because I have a Mac and I have an iPhone, and I use the Apple Music, and he uses, who knows, he has the Apple Watch, but he's like, because I like their ecosystem, everything works as it should. And he's like, and I have minimal problems with it. And so that's kind of what Apple sells nowadays. Whether or not you know it, or whether or not they explicitly say it, they are selling you into their ecosystem because they are, quote unquote, the best. You can argue that either way.
Yeah, and I would almost flip it on its head. So I feel like I'm more of like a corporate apologist at some level. That's not what I'm doing. I want to be very clear, because they're taking their position of having that beautiful ecosystem and switching it into a cash grab. Let's roll back the clock just a minute. So the iTunes iStore, you buy a song for $1. Great, you've got that song; it's yours. That was revolutionary. An app gets developed on the App Store. Great, that's awesome. It distributes. You sell it for $100. Apple takes 30%. Jackson, do you know where that 30% came from?
No, what was their reasoning?
That was kind of a market standard that was established years and years ago. When you go back to like warehousing, selling goods, before the days of Walmart and Target and the cheap large stores, you would sell a thing, you would mark it up 30% to cover your costs, your storage, your electricity, the manpower to move it around, because you can't charge somebody who buys like a dining room chair. You can't charge them labor for the guy in the warehouse, labor for the guy driving the truck to bring it. So how do you cover that overhead? You mark it up 30%. So Apple carried that forward into the iTunes and the iStore and was charging 30% on top of stuff. That's what the Epic Games lawsuit was all about, is you're charging way too much, because if you copy a file from the server onto your phone, is it worth 30% of the price of whatever that thing was?
Right.
And it's sitting on a server. The download is a couple pennies. Running the server doesn't take that much money. Maintaining the security, that takes money. But it's at 30%. It's totally a cash grab, right? You could run it for 5% and still make a massive profit off things.
Yeah, you could.
So I'm not a corporate apologist. What I'm saying is we should have that ecosystem, could be maintained and cultivated, but it should be more open source, more available for other people, so you don't have to pay extortionist prices to get into it.
Yep. I agree with you. I mean, that's obviously the way we hope it to be, is to be fair, and then you have to define fair. So that's for legislators to do.
Fair is, I get it the way I want it right now.
Yeah, that's my fair.
I guess Burger King's the only place where we can all be fair. You get to have it your way.
Can I just say I hate those ads? I hate them.
Well, if Google's listening, you'll get 17 of them tonight.
Thanks, John.
Only if he's got an Android phone.
Oh. Yeah, and I don't want to get on the conspiracy train there, but oh my goodness. I am 99% sure my phone listens to me.
It's not a conspiracy,
absolutely.
it's been proven.
Yeah, no, it depends who you ask. If you talk to Google, they'll say no. You talk to my phone after I've been hanging out with So in construction, you'd speak English and you speak Spanish, right?
Yeah.
I know enough Spanish. I can handle some decent conversations. Talking about construction here, put this here, we need cables over here, whatever. My phone will give me ads in Spanish for like 3 weeks after I have those interactions.
Oh my gosh.
It's like I don't search in Spanish. I don't talk in Spanish except in those situations. I don't have any Spanish speakers in my house, but all of a sudden I've got ads all over the place in Spanish. Yeah. So for everybody that says it doesn't listen, I just disagree. I disagree in Spanish too.
So, since we are talking about listening in on things, tell us a bit about this Black Hat conference.
Ooh.
Oh, okay. So that's a fun subject. So people that like to tinker, people who play with technology to see how it works, what can it do? It's kind of awesome. Saw a clip from Deviant Olam. I was going to say that wrong. We'll pin it down in the comments. He was showing the push button for streetlights and how some people had figured out how to tinker with those. So there's some municipalities where you push the button to cross the walk and it says wait. You keep pushing the button, it keeps saying wait. If you do it just right, you can tinker with it. And somebody had it, if you hold the button down, it start playing music. They chose what music. It's not right. It's not legal. It's not necessarily ethical. But they played with it to see what it can do. So Black Hat and DEF CON and some of these other conventions, it's people that tinker to see what can be done with the technology. People on the security side of things hate these kinds of conventions because people with nefarious goals can get together and come up with even more disastrous ideas. That's not how we should look at this. These are the top minds of the tinkerers, the creators, who are trying to find out how the systems truly work and share that information with the world.
These are the types of people that make open source what it is. Really, it's something incredible where, everyone has so many. I mean, the tech industry is so massive and there's so many niches that you have to have these types of things. And that's why I think they're so cool, is that, you have people who have passions and they get shared and everybody learns a lot from these.
Well, and the cool part is, so the name of this one is called Black Hat. It's because the Black Hat hackers, the shall we say the bad guys, this has been their convention, but it's also got overrun by a bunch of corporate guys trying to figure out what the Black Hats are actually doing. So now it's just kind of a mixed bag for everybody. But it focuses more on how does the system work. If I'm going to crack into somebody's security cameras in their building, how do I do that? There's presentations on that. Hacking elevators in buildings. Why not, right?
My favorite one that you introduced me to was the denial of service dog. That was just
that was hilarious.
A hilarious application of somebody with time on their hands who wanted to learn how something worked. I think, if I remember correctly, I don't know, I don't remember his name, but he didn't have any previous experience doing this. I mean, he was learning as he was going, and that was his entire presentation, him showing him learning how to, tinker with these things. And it was just hilarious, the entire thing. And it was fun because, I mean, he throughout his little journey, he just showed the world, this massive exploit, and in a very comical way.
Yeah, his denial of service was just for our listeners here. We got to find that and pin that in. Artie,
Making note.
Do us a favor, take a list. But we'll have to put a link to that somewhere in our description too. The denial of service dog had a pineapple in it, so it would mimic your Wi-Fi. It would hijack your Wi-Fi and then redirect it to what he wanted it to do, which was he had 3 different. He had Rickroll. So you try and connect. Your phone would automatically connect to the denial of service dog, and instead of checking your Facebook, you're now getting Rickrolled. So,
or there was one. I think it was the polka dot Afro song or whatever.
Afro Circus, yep.
Afro Circus.
Oh, I forget what the third one was, but it's one of those things. When you tinker, when you learn, it's disruptive, and that's kind of the essence of trying things out, right? That's what these conventions are for, is trying it out. I went to DEF CON years ago, and being what they are, somebody poured some soap into one of the fountains on the property. And so instead of this beautiful water fountain, there's a beautiful water fountain with 7 feet of bubbles on it. It was hilarious because you'd walk by, hey, that's funny. Hey, that's funny. And the poor hotel, and they're trying to maintain this. They clean it up. Great. Well, I walked by, and it was just this purple stain across the entire thing. Water's turned off. It's sitting there, and there's a pool of purple water. And, okay, that seems like it's a malicious act. The fountain's been dyed into a different color. Turns out it was pH indicator. The pH
really?
of the water was 3. So that the hackers didn't destroy the thing. They actually helped out the guys by saying, hey, you have a problem. We're pointing out the problem. And that's the spirit that I love, is they don't hurt people. They annoy people by pointing out the problems to fix the world and make it a better place.
I think that's what makes an engineer, right? Is you always hear that phrase, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? That's what everyone says. An engineer's like, no, we play with it until it's broken, and then we make it better.
Yep.
That's and that's just, it's just a mindset that hopefully most engineers have, is we are constantly seeking for flaws or for imperfections, and we get to play the role of, for lack of better words, an idiot who doesn't know what he's doing and doesn't use the thing for how it was intended, and you end up breaking things, and then you make it foolproof, and you make it, hopefully perfect, right? And that's personally, that's
nothing
what
is
inspires
foolproof
me.
to a sufficiently talented fool. Yeah, it's one of those things, watching the engineer go through the break fix cycle. Almost every engineer I know tries to make it better than it was before they broke it.
That's the goal. But so with what is it called? The Black Hat Conference?
Black Hat.
Or just called Black Hat. So is it ongoing now? I feel like
Yep.
we went off and we didn't even explain what's actually happening. And I don't know myself, so you'll have to update me.
Think of, like, you've seen TED Talks.
Yeah.
Think of that, but focused on one of my memorable ones was somebody trying to find x86 instructions that are undocumented and figure out what they do. So he built a cluster of like 60 computers and had them all running and executing out of spec instructions just to see what would happen. Well, in the process, he discovered that there is some processor level instructions that give you more authority than the kernel of the system you're working with. So you can run command prompt as processor, not just system.
Wow.
So, I mean, and he went through the whole discussion and shared his knowledge with everybody so that everybody knew one, this is possible, and two, gosh, let's not do this again. Let's fix this problem.
Speaking
So is it like a 1-day thing, or is it like a week-long event? How can we watch it?
Week long, they'll post some of the more interesting stuff online. I don't think all the talks are shared out, but
some of
it's
these
a lot
people
of
don't
fun.
want to be on camera.
Yep.
And I also want to point something out that a lot of the articles that I was reading today that were focused around the events at Black Hat, um, the majority of the issues that they were bringing forward had already been shown to the companies involved to help them find a way to fix the problems. So a lot of the presentations they're giving are on problems that have already been solved or are in the process of being solved. And I've noticed that that has been a recurring theme through the years, at least the last 5 years that I've been paying attention to it.
Well, and that's kind of one of the challenges, right? So Black Hat didn't start that way. It started with, "Hey, I got this thing. Let me tell you about it." They banter back and forth. Great. Let's say, hey, let's get our friends together, and so everybody got together. And, hey, let's have an actual event where we talk and share these cool discoveries we made. Well, as it got more popular, more famous, companies that were affected by these things got more interested. And it's like, okay, hey, what's your name again? Let me I'm gonna have my lawyer follow up with you after this conference. So it kind of helped shape this into something beneficial for society rather than just beneficial for the black hats, for the bad actors. Um, the responsible thing to do is go to a company and say, you have a problem. There's a hole in your fence, and people are getting in every day. Where I love these conferences is because it forces the correction companies need to take. So if we found a vulnerability in something, we call Microsoft and said, hey, if I do XYZ, your browser lets me run remote code on your system. If Microsoft hears that and doesn't do anything about it, what course do we do? Nothing. So these conventions give an avenue for you to have ethical, responsible, and disclose the information to say, hey, this is happening. We reported it. We reported it. We reported it. Here's the case numbers. Here's the person we talked to. You've done nothing. I'm now going to share this with the world. Nothing will scare a company like a hacker who's covering their bases so they can't get sued, and your product has a hole in it.
And it's so funny because, I mean, unless there's some sort of a bug bounty, but at that point you would think the company would be a little bit more receptive. But I mean, they're literally just doing it because, you know, you say the bad actors, but most of these people, they're not bad actors, even though they like to put on the black hat, right, as if they were. And, you know, they're really just doing it because they see a problem and they want it fixed.
Yeah, that's more called the white hats. White
Yeah,
hat hacker is somebody who does the black magic, but they don't do anything of the dark
malicious, yeah.
arts with what they do. But for instance, a buddy of mine was on a penetration test. He's sitting in a downtown high rise, and he hops on a Wi-Fi, an open Wi-Fi, and it's the neighbors across the street in their high rise. They didn't have a firewall protecting the Wi-Fi from their server. And with very little effort, he logged into the server and he got a list of all the files. And he's showing the company, hey, you want to know why you need security? I can get into their stuff right now. Now, he knew exactly where the legal line was, so he could not get sued. And at that time, in his jurisdiction, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not going to profess to be a lawyer. I'm not going to give legal advice, even if I was. He knew in his jurisdiction at the time, just browsing the list of files was white hat. If you open one of the files, you switch to the dark side and you're in black hat.
Mm.
And then
Makes
there's
sense.
gray hat. We won't get into
Yeah, there's
that
gray hat.
because
Yeah.
it's kind of murky.
And that's when you get into those very specific nuanced details, going across state lines and, working in a territory you don't normally work or something like that. If you did black hat things for white hat reasons, that's a gray hat. So it's these conventions are fantastic. If you get a chance to go, great. Just know that you can't be a noob walking in off the street saying, "Hey, I want to learn how to use my new pewter." You got to know what you're doing. You got to have some inkling. You gotta want to be part of that scene.
You walk in wearing a Jolt Cola shirt, you'll be welcomed.
Oh, that would be awesome.
If I were to ever walk into one, I know I would not take any tech with me. I would go in without anything, knowing the caliber of people that are in there and regarding what they can get into. Surely there's a couple of them that are sitting there just seeing what they can do at the Black Hat conference. To mess with people.
So the U.S. government put RFID chips in passports, and security industry was saying you can't do that. That's such a dangerous move, and the powers that be said you have nothing to worry about. You have to be in close proximity. Okay, so in Las Vegas at DEF CON, which is arguably one of the most Wi-Fi intensive areas anyways, they were able to read an RFID chip from a passport 69 feet away. So, and that was back at the introduction of these things. The tech has only gotten better. So I love these events because they point out the hypocrisy or the misstatements or they call you for not being fully informed or cautious. It's wonderful. One of the competitions is a Wi-Fi distance record. It's been a while. Years ago, Jackson unamplified, meaning there's no booster circuits, but using just antennas. Just take a guess what the record was 10 years ago.
10 years. I don't even know.
How far apart
feet?
could you get? How far apart could you get computer from computer with a Wi-Fi signal connecting them?
If I'm being realistic, what I actually think, what was maybe possible, 200 feet.
So the rules are, you have a set number of hours to do this. You have to transfer a packet. You have to, check, verify, and make sure it's all legit. The record was 119 miles.
Wait, what?
Two teams got in their cars, or one team got in cars, and they drove to opposite sides of the Las Vegas basin, got onto mountainsides, and set up parabolic directional antennas.
Mm-hmm.
And they got 119 miles. Satisfied the whole conditions of the competition.
Good grief. I need a new
router.
router.
One of my favorites is capture the flag. That's a fun one.
Sounds fun.
You have a server that has been hardened by some really, really good people, and they put a file somewhere on that server, and that's the flag. You have to hack into it and find the flag. And so your team has to just do what they can to break into the server through any means necessary. Now, there's a couple rules because you can't just walk over to the server and plug in a thumb drive. But it's fascinating. If you're geeky enough and you want to read on some of how these go down, there's some very charismatic hackers that talk about like sneaking into the other team's cubicle, their little trade show booth thing that they set up in, and plugging in a wire surreptitiously into their network and read what they're doing to hack into the target.
Oh my gosh.
I I mean, just sniffing the traffic between them and the server would be very enlightening.
That's pretty crazy. It's well beyond anything I know about, networking. But I mean, it's amazing to know that there's people out there that are so knowledgeable and they know all the little loopholes.
Hmm. A lot of power, a lot of control, a lot of fun. I'll tell you that. Hanging out with these people, you learn a lot about just how the world works and how information flows. So when you get companies like Google that get called antitrust, when you get companies like Apple that are putting together a very good product, but pushing the limits as far as what we would see as open source, it gets interesting. Unfortunately, we're kind of getting to the bottom of the hour here, guys. What else do we have to talk about that we've got time to talk about?
Well, as a little bonus one, we could pretty quickly talk about Google, robots.txt if we want to, just for fun, just for kicks. So, for those who don't know, we kind of talked about this a little bit. The internet was never meant to be, well, it was made not knowing that we would have what we have today, and so it wasn't made for robots to be going around, scouring the internet, downloading pages, doing what we call web crawling. So where we are at right now is if you are a web developer, you will create a file on your web server called robots.txt. And what's so funny about this entire thing is there is nothing that enforces this rule. But everyone who creates a website will want to create a robots.txt for anyone who decides to play nice on the internet. So if I have my own site, I'm hosting it, right? Which means I'm having to pay money for my server and for the bandwidth. And so there's lots of things that go into that. There's a certain number of channels isn't the right word. What would you say, John? Ports. Is that the right one I'm looking for? Not ports.
Close enough. So there's a certain number of connections that can be made.
Yeah, so that's a good way to put it. There's a certain number of connections that can be made to your computer at a time. There's a certain amount of bandwidth, amount of data that can be moved from at one time from your server to the client or to the user. So if I go visit google.com, my computer sends out a little request saying, "Hey, Google, send me your website. I want to look at it." And Google says, "Okay, here you go." Now, of course, the internet was built for a user to be clicking around with a mouse. You can't really do all that much that fast with the mouse. A robot has no such limitations. He can go clicking around, downloading things, requests, sending requests, thousands upon millions of times a second even. And so when that happens, if I'm the one hosting my website and say I have a couple images on my website, maybe a video, and I have a couple hundred robots come and download all of my stuff from my website, well, I'm going to be, my bandwidth is going to be maxed out. So if a regular user tries to come use my website, it's going to be very slow or even unresponsive. And I also have to pay for the amount of data that I'm using, right, from my ISP. So then I have to pay for all of those videos and pictures to be sent from my website to some robots. So that's the dilemma. So the solution is we write a little thing called robots.txt, which is me saying, if you're a robot, don't go here. Don't download this. Don't do this. And here's what you can look at. Now, if I'm the one who's making the robot, which is not that hard to do, if I'm going to be a courteous and kind internet user, I'll program my robot to first go and read the robots.txt and then obey the arbitrary rules that said web developer created. And that's kind of the whole premise of this, of web crawling and the rules. Now, there's really nothing that enforces a robot to use those rules. Now there are on the other side of that, you can of course have a firewall that can detect, hey, if a certain IP is sending, more than 10 requests a second, block that, right? That's how you can kind of protect yourself from that. And so that's kind of how that works in a very rudimentary and dumbed down way. Um, but what's kind of funny about this is, as we were talking about Google being a monopoly, do you really think Google is going to follow any robots.txt? No, they don't care. They're going to crawl your entire website, and they're going to get everything they want from it. So
They're going to make
it's
a copy of the robots.txt.
right. So it's an interesting. I find it to be interesting, and kind of funny because it's all arbitrary and it's like, please be nice to my website, and Google just says no. Why do I care, right? You don't want me to be nice to your website because you want me to know everything about it so that I can show your website to everyone. And so when we talk about monopoly, that's one of the things that comes to my mind, right? Is I don't want Google downloading my entire site, but at the same time, I kind of do because I want people to be able to find it.
Yeah, we should have the rules of engagement clearly laid out so that you can say, okay, you can look at my pictures, but you can't copy them. As a photographer, you would want to keep your thumbnails public, but the large sized images, put that behind, you have to pay this, or you have to be a human coming and looking at this. I'm not just going to hand it out to all the search engines so they can have copies. But yeah, it comes down to respect. And the kind of full circle back to the beginning. The internet was not designed with security in mind. The internet was designed with we're humans, let's be nice to each other, and don't be evil. Do unto others as you want done to you. It's a very altruistic kind of way of doing things. I wish we could maintain that, because the world would be a better place if everybody was nice to each other. But firewalls exist because people are not all nice to each other. Well, speaking of, we've got a fantastic firewall option. I'd love to talk a little bit more about it again another time. Let's maybe talk about that next week. We've got some more experience with it. We've got some hands-on. We've got some good things to talk about. But I think between here and there, I think we're at the bottom of the hour. Any final parting thoughts, Artie?
On hangers, no starch.
It's a good thought. Jackson, do you have something to put on Artie's hangers?
I can't top that. No.
Well, until next week, I am John.
I'm Marty.
And that was your cue, guys. That was your cue. Oh my goodness.
Oh, I'm Jackson. It was good being here, John.
Good to have you guys.
At least they know it's not rehearsed.
Well, if it's rehearsed, we do it badly. So, well, let's put a pin in this, guys. We'll circle back next week and have a fantastic podcast number. Gosh, we forgot to announce it. This was podcast number 15.
What was our title? I didn't even.
So we will. Oh gosh.
15 minutes.
So we'll catch you on 16, and like, subscribe, share, follow, all those fun things you do on social media to stay in tune. It's going to be a fun one.
And if you have any questions, please put them in the comments. We would love to respond.
True. That's true. We do want to see comments. We do want to respond.
Or mock you. We'll find out. Just kidding. We won't mock you.
No, Jackson.
I'm just kidding. It was a joke. We won't mock. No mocking here.
Jackson.
There's no dumb questions.
Well, just dumb stares that we give you for offering such a wonderful thought. Oh my goodness. Well, comedy aside, seriously, if you leave some comments below, we will do what we can to address those. But until next week, stay safe, stay secure, and have a good one.